Have you ever considered the possibility that the very parts of yourself people criticize, fear, or reject are actually the signs that you were never meant for an ordinary life? What if the things others call toxic are not flaws or corruption, but rather unrefined power waiting for direction? For too long, you may have been suppressing these traits, and that suppression has likely been slowly destroying you from the inside out. I want you to stay with me because, by the end of this discussion, you may finally realize why you've always felt different. It wasn't a mistake, and you weren't misunderstood by accident. You were misunderstood because the world is built to reward those who are quiet, compliant, and easy to control. From the very beginning of your life, people likely struggled to figure out where you fit. You could feel it in their reactions, the labels they placed on you, and the constant attempts to reduce your complexity into something simpler and more manageable. They called you too much, too intense, or too difficult. They labeled your natural traits as toxic because they lacked the capacity to handle them, not because there was something inherently wrong with you. A world obsessed with control will always fear what it cannot tame, and your spirit was never designed to be broken by the expectations of others. What most people fail to see is that the traits they criticize in you were never meant to be flaws. They were intended to be dark gifts. These are raw, unrefined forces specifically designed for survival, leadership, and a unique kind of spiritual authority. These qualities were meant to operate under immense pressure, not in the lap of comfort. You carry a power that was built to withstand chaos and navigate storms, not to blend into the mundane routines of a predictable life. You have a density to your soul that requires a larger purpose than what the average path can offer. Here is the truth that most people never hear. When these gifts are misunderstood and left untrained, they don't just vanish. When you are forced into environments that demand obedience instead of purpose, that energy turns inward. It creates a deep internal tension and a constant state of conflict. This is usually the point where the world starts pointing at you and calling you the problem. They see the smoke of your internal fire and call it a hazard, never realizing that the fire was meant to provide warmth and light for a much larger mission. This conversation isn't about excusing harmful behavior or glorifying destruction for the sake of it. Rather, it is a revelation meant to draw a clear line between what is truly toxic and what is simply powerful without proper guidance. There is a massive difference between being dangerous and being undisciplined. Often, those who are chosen for a higher path are punished for carrying abilities they were never taught how to wield. If you recognize yourself in these descriptions, listen closely. This message isn't here to shame you. It is here to wake you up and show you why you never fit in. Suppressing who you are has likely cost you more than you realize in terms of your mental and spiritual well-being. What you are hearing now might challenge the way you see your past struggles, explaining things you've never been able to put into words. If this resonates with you, take a second to acknowledge it. In spiritual terms, the number 9 represents completion and awakening. When you see cycles ending and higher ones beginning, it is a signal that you are ready to understand yourself at a deeper level than ever before. Now, let's look at the parts of you that others are too afraid to face. Emotional detachment is perhaps one of the most misunderstood traits you carry. To an outsider, it looks like you are absent or cold, but in reality, it is a form of containment. You didn't shut down because you lack feeling. You shut down because you feel too much, too fast, and too deeply for a world that frequently mishandles emotional truth. Early on, you learned that being open often came with a heavy cost. You realized that when you softened, people often used that vulnerability against you. You weren't just hurt, you were educated by your experiences. Betrayal didn't just cause you pain, it acted as a trainer. Rejection didn't just leave a wound, it provided a lesson in discernment. You learned the brutal truth that feeling freely in the wrong environment is genuinely dangerous. Consequently, your system adapted, not by becoming numb, but by becoming highly selective. Your detachment is a shield built after surviving too many emotional ambushes. You pulled your energy inward, because you realized that not everyone deserves access to the sacred space of your inner world. You mastered the art of silence and internal control. While others might collapse publicly or bleed their emotions into unsafe spaces, you learned how to observe without reacting. You found a way to absorb emotional impact without exploding. This is why when chaos erupts, you are often the only one who doesn't flinch. While those around you are spiraling, you remain steady. This is exactly where the misunderstanding starts. People see your calm as coldness or a lack of empathy. They assume that because you aren't reacting loudly, you don't care. But the reality is the opposite. You care so much that you refuse to let your emotions be weaponized again. You have seen what happens when you give unfiltered access to your heart, and you've watched people misuse that honesty. Detachment became your primary way of staying functional in a world that feeds on emotional leakage. This trait is actually a battlefield skill. It allows you to stay rational when pressure peaks and think clearly when others are hijacked by fear or panic. It gives you the ability to see situations exactly as they are, without the distortion of overwhelming emotion. This is why people secretly rely on you during a crisis. They know you won't crumble. However, this gift comes with a significant warning. If your emotional detachment goes unrecognized or untrained, it can lead to total isolation. The same shield that protects your heart can also prevent genuine intimacy if you leave it unchecked. This creates a tension where you feel the need to evolve. Detachment is just the first layer of your protection. Beneath it lies a much more powerful instinct that helps you sense danger before it even appears. Once you recognize this pattern, you'll see that you were being prepared for something much bigger than just surviving. Extreme self-reliance is another trait that is often misinterpreted. It doesn't usually come from a place of overconfidence. It comes from a place of absolute clarity. At some point in your life, you realized that help was often conditional and support was frequently inconsistent. You became independent because waiting for a rescue hurt more than taking action yourself. You understood that if something was going to be fixed or survived, it was going to be up to you. This realization rewired your entire approach to life, teaching you to stand while others learned to lean. You stopped asking for permission and stopped expecting help, not out of pride, but because of pattern recognition. Every broken promise you experienced confirmed that dependence was a liability. You built your life to carry your own weight and manage your own crises silently. From the outside, people don't see this as survival intelligence. They see it as resistance or stubbornness. They think your independence is a rejection of them, but they don't see the nights you had to sue, or the decisions you had to make entirely on your own without any guidance. This self-reliance creates a nervous system that is perfectly trained for survival under extreme pressure. You can adapt and recover faster than most because you've practiced doing it without a safety net. When things fall apart, you don't freeze, you move and act. The shadow side of this gift is that it can convince you that needing anyone is a weakness. The goal isn't to be alone forever, but to find alignment. This strength was meant to prepare you for heavier responsibilities that require high levels of discernment, leading to a presence that shifts the energy of any room you enter. There is a reason why rooms seem to change when you walk in, even if you don't say a word. You carry a presence that doesn't ask for permission to exist. Your energy arrives before your words do, and it often disrupts anything that is false or performative in that space. When you enter, conversations might slow down or people might become uneasy without knowing why. This isn't about you personally, it's about what your presence reveals. You act as a mirror that exposes the insecurities and false identities that others work so hard to hide. People might label you as arrogant because you don't seek their approval, or call you aggressive because you refuse to shrink yourself. They say you're too much, because your depth forces them to confront the parts of themselves they'd rather ignore. But intensity is not the same as hostility. You aren't trying to intimidate anyone. You simply refuse to dilute who you are to make others feel safe in their illusions. This is a natural form of leadership. You command respect without demanding it, and you see through manipulation instantly because your system reads inconsistencies. Because you don't play along with social games, truth becomes unavoidable in your presence. This makes you dangerous to those who rely on deception or false hierarchies. You've likely been singled out or opposed not because of a mistake you made, but because your presence shifted the balance of power. You didn't break the illusion, you simply revealed it. This often leads to another trait, the need to control or stabilize environments. This isn't about ego, it's about prevention. You feel instability forming long before anyone else does, noticing shifts in tone and energy. You read patterns like others read books. Once you've seen how a small misalignment can lead to total collapse, your instinct is to intervene and stabilize things before the chaos becomes public. This hyper-awareness was built through years of watching things unravel when no one was paying attention. People might call you rigid or controlling, but they mistake your vigilance for a desire to dominate. You don't seek control for comfort, you seek it for stability because you know the high cost of negligence. You would rather be misunderstood than proven right after everything fails. The hidden gift here is strategic intelligence. You think several steps ahead, anticipating consequences that others are blind to. This is why you are often calm during a literal emergency, but restless when things are peaceful, but misaligned. Your mind is constantly scanning for weak points to protect what matters. However, carrying this weight of foresight alone is exhausting. It often leads to the next behavior, disappearing without warning. You might withdraw from relationships or entire phases of your life without a dramatic goodbye because your system knows when the energy is depleted. To an observer, this looks like ghosting or running away, but for you, withdrawal is a necessary reset mechanism. You sense when a space or a connection has turned against your growth long before the conflict is visible. When a certain threshold is crossed, staying becomes more damaging than leaving. You don't leave impulsively. You usually try and observe much longer than anyone realizes. But once your inner signal says it's over, there is no negotiation. You choose disappearance over decay because you respect your energy too much to waste it. Every time you withdraw, you don't return smaller, you return clearer and more precise. This is driven by an internal voice that refuses to settle for mediocrity. This relentless self-criticism isn't about self-hate, it's about calibration. You are driven by an internal standard that feels impossibly high because you are responding to your true potential. While others chase ease, you chase evolution. You don't stay where things are good enough, you stay where things are becoming great. This makes your path harder and your rest more complicated, but it ensures you never stagnate. Finally, this brings us to your intolerance for disrespect. For you, disrespect is a signal of a deeper violation. You react strongly because you detect manipulation or dishonesty at the root. You've learned that small violations eventually grow into large ones, so you stop them early and decisively. This might make you look harsh, but you are choosing truth over harmony. Your existence acts as a catalyst for change in others. You don't cause the storms, you expose the pressure systems that were already there. You are here to initiate change, not to maintain a false sense of comfort. All these traits, the detachment, the self-reliance, the presence, the foresight, were never meant to be scattered or misunderstood. They were meant to be integrated into a single, powerful identity. You were never broken or cursed. You were carrying gifts that required maturity and discipline rather than suppression. The pain you've endured was your training ground. Now is the moment to stop apologizing for your depth and stop shrinking to fit into small spaces. When you accept the responsibility of who you truly are, you no longer have to force doors open. Your presence will do the talking for you.